For we know that if our earthly house were dissolved, we have a building of God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. 2 Corinthians 5:1. In memory of those who died in the tornado, April 3rd, 1974, gets me right here. You know, it really does.
As we brace for more severe weather today, we are also on the eve of one of the worst tornado outbreaks in our nation's history. 1974, dubbed the super outbreak. 148 twisters cut through 13 states in about 24 hours, and Brandenburg, Kentucky took one of the hardest hits. We went back on this 50th anniversary and found for many survivors, the scars remain.
It's very terrifying, and you just try to get it out of your mind.
We could hear the people screaming.
Someone told me that there wasn't anything left in Brandenburg. Everything in the path of the tornado, it took it.
The only F5 tornado to ever hit Kentucky touched down in Brandenburg on April 3rd, 1974.
You never get over it, what you saw that day.
It gutted this small Meade County town on the banks of the Ohio River.
Those images you never get out of your mind or your brain, just burned in.
Devastation doesn't do it justice.
It's hard to believe.
A black wall of more than 250 mile-per-hour winds.
It was from there to there, that big.
Decimated.
The houses laying down, streets being total rubble.
Everything.
People were bleeding, power poles in the ground.
In its path.
I still have nightmares this time of year when I think about it.
And now, even 50 years later,
Most of the fatalities are right here in this section.
the people who survived can still see it.
There was a family and their last name was Son.
That was never more evident than when we took a ride recently with Steve Straney, retracing the path of the storm.
And they had just come from the library.
He was a senior in high school in 1974.
They got caught right in the middle of the tornado, and they were scattered. And I found one of the children down closer to the church down there.
Straney vividly remembers the sights, the sounds, even the smells as he muddled through the mess, finding the wounded and the dead.
The insulation blowing around, you can smell, when these houses went down, there was dirt and dust and stuff that got scattered in there.
31 people died, 128 homes were destroyed, 30 buildings flattened, including the county courthouse.
We just happened to walk outside and saw it coming.
David Pace can't forget either. He was in a house that doubled as City Hall. 50 years later, he's Brandenburg's mayor.
I didn't know what a tornado was.
He remembers kicking in a door at the city building to hide from the storm and worrying about the damage.
When the house collapsed around you.
Yeah, we knew the door didn't matter anymore.
Pictures tell the tale of what this community endured. Streets impassable, littered with the battered remains of cars tossed about. Snapped trees and the rubble from houses reduced to kindling.
I had an older truck that we used to help every person we could.
Brandenburg only had 1,500 people back then, so no one was a stranger. It made each loss personal and the rush to help more dire.
I was right here.
Tom Bridge also sees that day, especially when he's driving down Main Street. He was a part-time minister back then, out delivering newspapers.
I said, Lord, I didn't know I was coming to heaven in a pickup truck.
The storm toppled his truck, and he survived. Half the buildings on Main Street did not.
We went down and got Miss Rose Grinnell out from under her store that had collapsed on her.
The rescues, that's what this community remembers most.
Was in her 80s and had some difficulty getting out. We just tunneled under there and got her out.
We were using doors, kind of like gurneys, and we were taking doors off the house and putting people on the doors and carrying them to the street.
Fort Knox and the National Guard came to town quickly with nurses, doctors, and supplies, choppering out the injured to local hospitals.
It's almost like being in a war zone.
Back then, tornado warnings often came by word of mouth, literally neighbor calling neighbor saying, it's heading your way. Because in 1974, the National Weather Service was still using 1950s era equipment.
Something good came out of it, and that's the early warning system. There was no such system until this tornado.
The super outbreak sped up development for more advanced radar technology and the political will to fund it. It paved the way for the emergency alerts that now come to your television and cell phones, and the widespread use of tornado sirens. And And that's what survivors in Brandenburg hold to most.
Because the town changed. I mean, it literally changed.
The lives lost here so many years ago
You have to ask, how do I turn this around and make it something positive?
saved countless others.
I'll never forget it.
They did not die in vain. The city of Brandenburg and Meade County will host a remembrance ceremony honoring the 31 lives lost at First Baptist Church tomorrow. A bell will toll for each victim at 4:10 p.m., commemorating the minute the tornado cut through town.